when I knew I was coming to San Francisco, I knew I had to come to San Francisco City College because I'm in charge of the museum that has the most important collection of Olmec artifacts and monuments in the world. And the replica of the colossal head that you have here is a replica of the original head that we have in the museum in Xalapa. So this is an invitation for you to come to Xalapa and visit our museum where we have 7 colossal heads. That's the biggest collection of colossal heads and other monuments. And so I wanted to come and maybe answer some questions that you have about the head that you see every day, or maybe just give you new questions, and that will be good enough for me. Because it is true that for the Olmecs, we probably have more questions than answers. Let's start finding us in space. This is Mesoamerica, as you very well know. Most part of the today Mexican territory and part of Central America. And it is divided into several areas, and you will find the Olmecs right in the Gulf Coast. You see the one divided, the area divided by the green line is the Gulf Coast. That's what how we divide by cultural areas Mesoamerica. And the Olmecs developed in the southern part of that area. And in fact, it is the first civilization in Mesoamerica. Just to find in time, to give you an idea of time, you can see how the Olmecs are the first civilization, 1200 to 400 BC. And that's much more before the rest of the cultures that you probably have heard about. The most famous are always the Mayans and the Aztecs, and we know many more things about Mayans and Aztecs because when the Spaniards came, those cultures were alive, and the chroniclers wrote a lot about those peoples. But the Olmecs had long ago disappeared, so that's why we don't have documents written in an European language about Olmecs. And so as the farther we go in time, the more questions we have, and it's purely archaeology what we can do. For the Mayans or the Aztecs, we have historic documents or things that give us more information. This is the territory of Mexico, and you can see how green it is in the Gulf Coast. There is much more humidity. It's very different, this green part, from the rest of Mexico, which is more dry territory. And there is the area where the Olmecs developed, in very humid place with jungles and very green vegetation. There you have some of the main sites of the Olmecs, right in the east coast of Mexico. We have 3 main capitals of the Olmecs. That is San Lorenzo, La Venta, and Tres Zapotes. Those are the 3 cities where they built or they sculpted colossal heads. San Lorenzo is the first one. And it is very interesting to see that the quality of the sculpture is better for the oldest city, for San Lorenzo, than for the rest of the cities. The one that you have here is a replica of a San Lorenzo head, number 1. You can see that there's still humidity in these places. You can see that the floods are terrible in this area. This was last year in La Venta Museum, and as you can see, the head is placed outside, and they had these floods, terrible, that made the head be really in water. And we can think of pre-Hispanic times, and these people dealing with a lot of floods and a lot of rain, a lot of water, and they did control water, but mainly to get it out rather than getting into the cities, because that is a very important thing, to control water for civilizations. The Olmecs seem to have started all the ideas in Mesoamerica. We speak of an area in Mesoamerica because we find incoherence in ideas and in the way they developed their cities and in the way they saw the world, the cosmovision. And it seems that everything started with the Olmecs. Probably the main concept of the philosophy in Mesoamerica is duality. This means the equilibrium of opposites. It's a bit like the yin and yang Oriental idea. Mesoamericans would think that there is no light without darkness, there is no day without night, there is no life without death, there is no woman without man, there is no feminine without masculine. We have both sides, always two sides. And this seems to be the main concept of Mesoamerican philosophy. This has to do also with the organization of the space of the world. We have horizontal directions. The world is divided into 4 directions and the one in the center. And through the center, there are levels that are put one on top of the others, like vertical levels, and that is the idea of the universe. And we find in sculptures and iconography in the Olmecs that they already had these concepts, the concept of duality, the horizontal directions, or the vertical levels. Let's take a look. For instance, this is a sculpture. It looks very modern, but it is Olmec from San Lorenzo. And you can see this mask divided in 2. It is not something that was done to the mask after it was made, because as you can see, some of the mass of the stone is bigger than the mask. So it's not a mask being destroyed by half. It was the concept before making this sculpture. And this idea will stay in Mesoamerica forever. We have some examples in the Gulf Coast of other sculptures having half of the face covered. And you have probably seen figures or masks in Aztec times where they have half of the head alive and half dead, or half of the face different than the rest. So they have this idea of opposites together. It seems that they had a myth that had to do with twins. We know for the Mayans and the Popol Vuh that the twins were something very important, and they had myths about the twins. And it seems that this started in the Olmecs, because we have found some twins depicted in their iconography. This is very interesting, an ensemble of sculptures found together, because it is also very interesting to see that the concept of sculpture that we have is different from the one that they had, because we always think of sculptures as one. I mean, we try to put one in the middle as a monument, and to think of putting ensembles together is like a different idea. It's like today artists do installations, and they have this idea of putting things together. These twins were found with 2 jaguars, so it's a myth that has to do with a couple of twins and a couple of jaguars, and that we know that afterwards in Mesoamerica they kept having myths about twins. In the horizontal plan, as I said before, they had this idea of 4 directions that we know for later times, like the Aztecs. This is a tablet that was carved, but the perspective in art is very different from ours. So if we put it in a drawing like we would see it today, like we would understand it, it would look like this. You see that there is a cross in the middle, there is like a mountain in the line, and it's following a direction. It is following north-south or east-west. There is a line, and this is the idea that the Mesoamericans had afterwards to build all of their cities. This is another object that we have at the Museum of Anthropology in Xalapa. The carving, you can see it here better, and you see that it has 4 motifs around the character. So it would look like this if we put it in our European perspectives today in art, so that we would have 4 directions and the main character in the middle. And this is an idea that is kept for the rest of Mesoamerica for all times. The cities were built with this idea, and it is interesting to know that the heads were found marking directions. Like the 4 heads in La Venta that you see in the first map here, they were found in a direction east-west. And the 10 heads that have been found in San Lorenzo are marked with points there in the second plan, and you can see that it is mainly a direction north-south. In fact, they say it's like two lines going north-south. So that shows that they were already concerned with directions for urbanistic ideas, for construction of architecture, and for putting their sculptures as well. This is a picture and the plan of La Venta, and you see that they follow these lines, these directions that will be parting from here. All the cities in Mesoamerica will have a plan that follow directions. So that Teotihuacan, you will see following the Calzada de los Muertos, the death, I don't know how to say, the street, the avenue of the death, and Tenochtitlan, which was divided into 4. So they always would conceive a city following special and very precise directions. In the Gulf Coast, we have this site, which is a bit more recent than the Olmecs, but you can still see this idea of the urbanistic plan following directions and being very, very clear in the disposition of the mounds. And talking about the vertical levels, which was the other concept that I said that is very clear in Mesoamerican cosmovision, we have the levels where human beings live, the upper levels, and the levels under where we live. And there are beings, supernatural beings, that live up or down, and we live in the middle, and that's the main idea of Mesoamerican cosmovision. And we can find in the Olmecs already some ideas in iconography that let us know that they were thinking about these levels. There are animals that are related to these levels, like birds, obviously, are related to the upper beings, and the jaguars or serpents and the earth monsters being related to the beings down. So you can see the bird there in a mural of Oxtotitlan. You can see the human being there in the middle, and you can see the earth monster under it. So we have paintings and sculptures and iconography for the Olmecs that tell us about this idea of 3 levels in the universe. This sculpture also shows us the idea of the different levels, and we can see a jaguar, a vertical jaguar, and you can see in the right that there is a human being that is upside down, and he has the helmet of a bird. So it's like the union of a being of the upper level and one being from the level, the inframundo, and the human being is in the middle. So they already had this idea. In Chalcatzingo, they found this sculpture, fascinating, which has this earth monster. You can see the eyes and the nose in the upper part, and the mouth is a gigantic cross, a hole. And around the hole, you can see like a pyramid, seen from up, so that you can have the idea of going through levels, from the vertical levels to down. It seems to be a myth for the Olmecs that some scholars have explained as being the product of a relation, maybe a sexual relation between a jaguar and a human being. We don't know this for sure, but we have found several sculptures or paintings that let us know that there was this mythical idea of a relation between men and jaguar. Jaguar was a very important animal. Some people say it's probably like a totem for some peoples in Mesoamerica, and especially for the Olmecs. And the jaguar had a cult in Mesoamerica for the rest of the times. These are very interesting because you can see a human being and a jaguar being together there, and especially it is the sex of the man up there that is touched by the tail of the jaguar. So there's maybe a symbolic idea, very strong. And the other two is a sculpture that, if you see, there are the jaguar paws are here. You can maybe see the nails there of the jaguar, and there's a human being here. We don't know if this has to do with like a battle or a conquest or the jaguar killing the person. Some people say maybe there was something that related human beings and jaguars, because what we do know for sure is that there is a very important character in Olmec art that is called the were-jaguar. And we have were-jaguar babies in many pieces of Olmec art, beautiful, beautiful babies. They have some traits that are like a baby, but the mouth is very strange. Doesn't look like a human being's mouth. It is more related to the way they depict the mouth of the jaguar in some other sculptures. And we have were-jaguar babies as well as were-jaguars adults. So maybe they had myths and stories of a hero that was a were-jaguar. It was so many times sculpted. And there's also a relationship very strong between men and children. You can see here the throne in La Venta, where there is a man that is carrying a baby in his lap. Also from that throne on the side is a bas-relief with two men, and each one has a baby. And it's not a cute little baby. It has this strong mouth like a jaguar. It's a very special baby. This is the Lord of Las Limas, which is also part of the collections at the Museum of Anthropology in Xalapa. And as you can see, it's a green stone sculpture, and it is a man carrying a baby. And the baby, again, is not, it's human, but it has some traits that are more related to the jaguar. You can see the strange mouth. This figure was found by locals in Las Limas. Las Limas is the town that gives the name to this sculpture. And when they found it, they thought it was a virgin, because like a Madonna, because the human being is carrying a baby. And that has to do with our cultural way we see babies. We see them more related to women. So if we see somebody carrying a baby, we assume it is a woman, but as you can see the chest of this character, which is naked, the chest, we can see very well that is a man, and as the other examples in La Venta. And this is the girl that found this piece, and you can see in the 50s, late 50s or 60s, and you can see that they put a crown of flowers around the statue, and in fact they gave a whole cult to it, because they thought they had found a virgin. This is the sculpture, so you can see it from the front and the back. And take a look at the holes in the back. It's very interesting. These holes here, let me point at you, these, and these. We believe that these holes were made so that they could carry the statue like this. And it is very interesting, because then we can think of proselytism in religion as well. Religion, as you know, is a very important and it's very related to power in Mesoamerica. So the idea of carrying a statue from one town to the other, that would explain why they found this important figure, this important sculpture in a town like Las Limas, which is not so important, because a sculpture like that would have been found in San Lorenzo or, you know, La Venta, Tres Zapotes, the main cities. But Las Limas is a small town, still an Olmec town, but not very large. But we can think of a sculpture that is being carried by the priests, so that they can teach maybe some of the concepts and the ideas and the religious ideas and the gods. And in fact, this sculpture has some carvings on his shoulders and on his knees that have been read as the gods of the Olmecs. We do not know the names for the gods. We do not know many things, because I told you they are so ancient. But Coe proposed that these 4 gods would be like gods, more later gods from the Aztecs. Like, he proposed that the one in the left would be Xipetotec, because he has these scarves on his face, and the balls, the circles, the small circles, mark like blessings, heridas, wounds, thank you. So that, as you know, Xipetotec is the god that they take the skin away, so that this would mark the wounds, and that's a known concept in iconography, that you will mark wounds with circles. The right on top is, according to Coe, would be the Xiuhtecuhtli, the god of fire, because of the shape of the eyebrow. The one in the left down would be Quetzalcoatl, because Quetzalcoatl is also, this feather serpent, is also related to a cross like an X, and he has it on the eye. And the one in the right, on the lower part, would be related to Mictlantecutli, because his eye is closed. We don't know if that is true. It's just a theory. Still, what we do accept is that they are probably the gods of the Olmecs, probably the 4 most important, because we have found some other pieces where faces like these are carved. So it's not just something that the artist thought about tattooing on the sculpture or marking it, but it's rather a figure that was well known and that was repeated. In fact, the idea of Covarrubias, which was another artist, very important artist in the 50s in Mexico, a muralist, was very interested in Olmec art. And he proposed that the gods of the Aztecs and of all the peoples in Mesoamerica came from the origin of the Olmecs. And let me show you his scheme. There goes the Olmec objects, and then you can see how aesthetically we can follow lines of development in the drawings of the gods. So as you can see, according to Covarrubias, the origin is the Olmec features, and they develop into different entities to end with these gods in the different areas of Mesoamerica. We also know of some rituals that the Olmecs practiced. We know about hidden offerings, ball games, sacrifice, probably, not for sure. The calendaric system seems to start there. The erection of monuments, sculptoric scenes, resculpting, and glyphic writing. This was found in Venta. It is an offering that was found all together. These figurines with the small cells, they were found, put like that, and buried. So we know that they used to bury offerings, and that they kept doing that in the rest of the development in Mesoamerica. So I insist all the time that everything seems to have started in the Olmec culture. This was found in Manatee. It's a wooden sculpture with cells, and they are found like this. They are put together in a certain disposition. These are also cells found in El Manatee, and as you can see, it's not just like they wasted cells and left them there, but they are in a spacious disposition. They are put together for certain reasons, following probably a ritual. These are part of all the offerings that were found in Manatee recently. They are made of wood, and we are very lucky to have wooden rests found because they are so ancient. Somehow the chemistry of the soil in Manatee allow these objects to be conserved. We now know that they did practice the ball game because also in El Manatee, which is a site not too far from San Lorenzo, they found these rubber balls. I must say that the word Olmecs has to do with with rubber. I should have started maybe by that, but let me tell you. Olmecs is not the name that they had themselves. We don't know how they call themselves because it's such an ancient culture. What happens is that when the Spaniards came, the Aztecs told them that in the east coast, there in the land of the Olmecs precisely, lived the Olmecs. That is the people from the land of rubber. Olin means rubber, and it is also the word for movement, which is a very important concept also in Mesoamerican cosmovision. And Olin or Ulama is the ball game. So there is this, all these ideas together, movement and ball game and rubber, and the Olmecs would be the people from that land. But when the Spaniards are speaking, that is 1500 AD. And we're speaking of 1200 BC, so it's too far in time. We don't know how the Olmecs called themselves. We don't know which language they spoke. But it's interesting that they finally got a name that was related to rubber, and we now know, because of the Manatee project, that they did know the rubber, they did use the rubber, and we have found these balls for the game, which was an important rite, not only a sport, but a rite, a ritual in Mesoamerica. Did they practice sacrifice? We don't know. What we do know is that we find a lot of sculptures that are broken. In the Museum of Anthropology in Xalapa, many of them lack the head, and they lack it since pre-Hispanic times. Was it because of conquerors or because of battles or revolts in the same city? Or was it because they were going to reuse the sculpture to make another sculpture? We don't know. Or is it a ritual sacrifice, like they are breaking their own monuments? The calendaric system, we have some objects that have dates. This is in Dumbarton Oaks, in the collection of Dumbarton Oaks in Washington, D.C. It's a fantastic statuette in green stone, and you can see the date here, right there. As you can see, it's like the long counts of the Mayans that you have certainly seen objects with. It's normally based on a vigesimal system with dots and bars. The Los Tuxtlas statuette date is 162 after AD. The date there, you can see the dots and the bars. If you count them, you have an 8, 6, 2, 4, 17. That is the count of that the Mayans had for the days, the veintenas, you know, the months of 20 days, and the years and the bactunes. So it goes like Winal, Kin, Tuk, Bactun, Katun, and it's a long count. So you can find an exact date. And with this date that starts in Bactun 8 is the 162 after, okay? The other example of dates in Olmec sculptures is this Stella of Tressa. It is divided in two. One piece is at the National Museum of Anthropology, and the other part is in the site. They are now making replicas to put them together because none of the two museums want to give the other part. This had a long discussion because they first found the lower part, what we see, well, exactly what we see here in stone and the lower part in the drawing. And there was a big discussion of archaeologists thinking to which Bactun it could belong. And luckily, they found the other piece, so the discussion ended, and it was a 7. You can see under the head, let me show you. Under this head, you can see here the 7, the bar and 2 dots. That's the 7, the Bactun 7. When we find sculptures in the Mayan times, like in Palenque, is the 9th Bactun. So you can see that we are speaking of much earlier times. And this is a date of 7, 16, 6, 16, 18, which gives a date of 32 before BC, okay? So these are like the oldest dates that we know for Mesoamerican writing, and it's very interesting to have this in Olmec sculptures. So probably the calendar started in the Olmec culture. Not only do we have these examples of long count, but also if you think of the calendar system that the Aztec used, and I just saw the Aztec calendar in the other campus. William took me to see it. Thank you so much. Well, the days of that calendar, if you think about it, they have several animals that are not native of the central part of Mexico, like the crocodile or the monkey, Osomatli and the Zipactli. Those are animals from the Gulf Coast. So that is an idea that let us think that maybe the calendar was a creation in the Gulf Coast. Again, the Olmecs. Did they have writing? We have always spoken of iconography. Recently, this piece was found. It's not very clear in the picture to see all the designs. In the right, you have the drawing. There is a discussion whether if this is a real, an archaeological object, or if it is a fake, because it was not found in an archaeological excavation. It was found by locals in the debris of a road construction. And already scholars went from many places in the world, and an article appeared in Science last year speaking of this great finding, because if it is real, it is amazing. It is very strange because you can see our idea of writing like a lineal system, which is not common in Mesoamerica. As you can see the codex, for example, the reading is not lineal. You have images that go, and you make a whole reading in different orders. The Mayans started with a phonetic writing with syllables that go in a linear way. So if this is a real Olmec artifact, it is amazing. But we don't know yet. Many of the signs look very much like signs that we have found in other sculptures of Olmec origin. This is found it was found in El Cascajal, so it's the Bloque de Cascajal, and it is known by that name still. And the person who found it hasn't given it to the INA, so he still have it. Though we don't have it in a museum or in a collection that we can study. As I mentioned, they also have sculptoric scenes, and these are the same twins that I showed before with the jaguars. These were found in a hill in an arrangement following a line, the two twins in front of the two jaguars. It is an art that is very human-focused, and that is also what makes it so easy to travel and so accepted all around the world. When you're in front of the head, El Rey, right here, the message goes very easily to you. It's a head. I mean, you can see the eyes and the lips, and you can tell it's a human figure very easily. If you have an Aztec piece, like the Aztec calendar, you have to know a lot to understand it. If you go to Mayan art, the same. But with Olmec art, we are immediately connecting. I mean, it's so easy for it to travel, and that's why it's so well accepted, I think, in exhibitions all around the world, and that's why it was so successful here at the Young, the Colossal Head 4, because we humans instantly understand the art focused in human figure. Beautiful, beautiful sculptures, monumental sculptures, and they also started this idea of making monumental sculptures that stayed in Mesoamerica forever. This is a woman from the Olmec area. As you can see, the Indians today look still like Olmecs. I brought also this picture because often people wonder if they are Africans, the heads, because of the beautiful lips that they have and the nose flattened, very beautiful faces that the Olmec heads have. But as you can see, some of our Indians, local Indians, with these epicantic eyelid folds that is absolutely from Asia, they look like the Olmecs. Here's a mask that we also have in our collections in the Museum of Anthropology in Xalapa. Just publicity, that's what I came for. Okay, they started monumental sculptures, as I said. The stela for the rest of the development in Mesoamerica, they always built stelas. As you know, the Mayans would erect an stela every time a governor would take into power, or every time a period of time was over, they would make a big event and make an erection of an stela. So this is a tradition that also started with the Olmecs. Here are some stelas. This one and these two. The thrones for the men in power to sit on. Here's one throne, and there is this man with a little boy. Maybe it has to do with the lineage, how do you say, lineage of power, of the people in power. And it seems to be coming out of a cave. And we know that in Mesoamerica, the caves are entries to the underworld. Here's another one, another throne that is in the museum in Xalapa, again with a man coming out of this idea of cave. And the heads, of course. These are the 10 heads found in San Lorenzo. 17 have been found up till now. And these sculptures are, I mean, they started this idea of monumental sculpting in the Olmec times, and it stayed in Mesoamerica in different shapes, with different ideas, but still making monolithic sculptures. Let me show you a map, again, of the Gulf Coast, and it is amazing to see that they would bring these masses of basalt from the Tuxtla Mountains. That is about 60 kilometers away from San Lorenzo. That would be like, I don't know, 30 miles or so. The Tuxtla Mountains are here. You can see, I'm pointing here. And San Lorenzo, let me show you. Here, right there. That is San Lorenzo site, where they, here, right there. In fact, it was an island in pre-Hispanic times. That's why I can see the round shape in the map. So they made big, huge efforts to transport these materials. We still don't know how they did it. We don't know how they did many things. Maybe they transported by the water. There are a lot of rivers in the region, and you have also the coast, the Gulf Coast, or maybe by land. We don't know many things how they did it. But these are huge masses, and you can see a preform in San Lorenzo, in the site of San Lorenzo, where 10 have been found. Here is a stone that is just the stone. It's not sculpted. So we think that they would move these huge masses of stone, and they would be sculpted in the site. The proportions of these heads is really, really incredible. This is number 1, El Rey, that you have here. And this is number 4 that was at the Dion. This is a small one. Small, let me tell you, they are huge. This is the biggest one, La Quwata. They are enormous, tremendous, huge. And it is also amazing to think that they did these sculptures without using metal. Even now, when Nachito, Don Ignacio Pérez Solana, who built this sculpture, works with metal cinceles, many get broken. I don't know the name of the tool, the cincel. You know, many get broken because basalt is a very hard rock. And Don Nacho, the sculptor of this head, he likes to work with same kind of rocks. So it is such a hard work to do it, even today. To transport it, it is so hard with our technology. And here are the people from the Dion. They can tell you how it was to move the head. Or you can see the installation of the head here, which is, I mean, it poses us a lot of problems. And to think that they did it 1200 BC, they let us know that these people had a technology that we have forgotten, and that they knew how to make things with the elements that were in their natural environment. We also know that they re-sculpted things. This head was a throne before being a head. Take a look at that. That is the profile of the head. In fact, the ear of the head could not be finished here because it was lacking this part of the stone. And they have proposed that maybe if a cacique, a chief had a throne, if a chief had a throne, once he would die, they would make his portrait on the throne, so nobody else would sit on that throne. That's just a theory. We don't know if that is the case. What we do know is that some of the heads, before being heads, were thrones. Also, I proposed in an article that maybe the heads were not really straight as we put them in the museums, because there is an angle of deviation on the base. You can see there. This is at the National Museum of Anthropology. We always change a bit the bases so that the heads look straight like that. But I think that maybe if we just allow the heads to sit on their bottom, they would go a little bit up, like the Padua heads, you know, the Pascua heads, I'm sorry, the island of Pac, and that you can see that they are a little bit, not too much, but a little bit like looking up, And maybe that's the case for our heads, because if they wanted a flat bottom, they would have made it. I mean, they were extraordinary sculptures. So maybe in the museums we are forcing to have heads very straight, and maybe the deviation shows us some other information. This is a head, colossal head number 7, and I propose that it has hands on top. You can see the fingers on top there. It's very eroded, but you can still see the hands. When Beverido found it, he said that in the helmet it had hands. But then Beatriz de la Fuente said it was bands, and because they buried it and stayed buried for years before coming to the museum in Xalapa, the idea that they were bands stayed. And I took these pictures. They are not very good, but you can see the fingers, even probably with nails there. So I think it is a hand. And I'm speaking of this because I want to show you an idea that I have of the San Lorenzo helmets being related to the levels, the vertical levels that I spoke about at the beginning. So we would have elements in the helmets that are either animal or geometric, and one that is human, the number 7 that I just showed. These are the 10 heads of San Lorenzo. Number 1, the El Rey that you have here, is a geometric design in the helmet. Number 2, these are like parrots. You will see the picture later on, and you will see better the parrots that are on his helmet. Number 3, robes. Again, robes in number 4. Number 5 has jaguar claws. Number 5, geometric. No, that was 6. This is 7 with hands, human hands. Number 8 with birds' beaks. Number 9 with robes. And number 10 again with a jaguar. Garra is claw. Okay. So these are the 10, and I think that maybe they are speaking again of the levels in the vertical cosmos, because the animals that are depicted are from the upper levels, like the birds, and jaguars for here, and the human, we live in the levels in the middle, and we know in Mesoamerican iconography that gods use robes to pass from one level to the other. So I wonder if these robes in these other heads have to do with the possibility of the chiefs of going through one level or another. Or if it is just a symbol of power, as it has been said, because robes and very large robes must have meant power to move those colossal, enormous stones to make the sculptures. Probably it was also a control with the robes. But it is interesting to think of these chiefs being chiefs also of the levels of the cosmos. We know that shamanistic powers allow shamans to go into different levels. And power in Mesoamerica is related to religious powers, so maybe it has to do also with shamanistic power to go into different levels. Now we start with looking at the heads, and I will start with the most recent, that is Los Tuxtlas heads, and I will end by the most ancient ones, the ones from San Lorenzo. So these are the Los Tuxtlas heads. This was found by Beberido, and I'm going to show you, well, this is the way they moved it at the time. This is La Quwata head, which is the largest one. It is in the park of Santiago Tuxtla now. It is the biggest one. It is the only one that has the eyes closed. And it was by pure chance that Beberido found it. Seems that he was with his students doing field work in Los Tuxtlas, and they sat on a round table to have lunch. And when they finished lunch, they said, "This is very round stone, isn't it?" And it was the top of the head of La Quwata. I was very lucky that Francisco Beberido was my teacher, so I really appreciated him. He passed away, but this is one of the heads that he found. Now, this is Monument A of Tres Zapotes, which was first reported by Jose Maria Melgar. And when they found this monument in 1862, there's when they started speaking of the Olmecs. That's the first time that they gave the name Olmecs to that civilization that we didn't know its name. So it was the finding of this head that started the whole research about Olmecs. Monument Q in Tres Zapotes it was found by Sterling and Drucker. And now we go to the La Venta heads. The 4 heads of La Venta were found by Stirling. This is number 1. That's the one that we saw with all the water, half of it. Number 2, there is Marion Stirling sitting by the head. Monument 3 in La Venta. That's a friend of mine that visited La Venta before Stirling took the heads from the site. Monument 3 and Monument 4. And now we go to the San Lorenzo's heads. I start by the 10, and I will go to number 1, which is the replica that you have here. I found interesting to show you how they were found, because we always wonder of these findings. Many of them, like the ones that Stirling found, were evident on the soil, as you saw. So the locals knew where they were. They took Stirling to see where they were. But afterwards, they realized in San Lorenzo that San Lorenzo does not have basalt. As I showed you, it comes from Los Tuxtlas. So what they did is to use a magnetometer. They would go with a magnetometer and make readings. And so the basalt has a lot of magnetic whatever. And so they can read differences in the readings on the soil. So that's how they decide where to dig. And that's how the latest heads have been found. The ones that Stirling found were evident still on the floor of San Lorenzo. This was found by Anne Cyphers, who works at the UNAM, and you can see how she starts digging, and then they find the head. This is a picture of Beatriz de la Fuente next to number 10. This head is still at the side museum of San Lorenzo. They call it Tiburcio because it looks very much like a man who helped them in the project Tiburcio. Okay. And then now, this is number 9, and it was found like that. Omar Ruiz Gordillo was the archaeologist that went to report the finding, but it was really found by the locals. It's amazing how they look in their environment. There it is, number 9, smiling at us. The only smiling, no, there is one in La Venta that is a bit smiling. Two are smiling, the rest are very serious heads. This is number 8. It was found by Jürgen Bruggemann and Maria Reti Hers. But this was, in fact, it was also found by Beberido, the one that found La Quwata head, but he was not always very lucky. You say here it's one penny short and one, how do you say that? Always, no? Well, that happened to Beberido. This is the head that we have in the front of our museum, and it went to Washington for the Olmecs exhibition. It's a beautiful head. It looks like new, almost not eroded. And what happened is that Beberido came with a magnetometer and noticed differences in the readings, so he started doing the pit, and he digged and digged and digged and couldn't find anything, so he decided to cover the pit. And years later, Jürgen Bruggemann came with Mariaretti hairs and looked at the notes of Beberido, and he said, this is wrong. He had to do whatever. And 40 centimeters apart from the pit that Beberido had made, he found this head. So I was saying 1 minute late and 1 penny short. That happened. But still, he found it, and then Jürgen Bruggemann refound it. And now the next one is the one with the hands, was found by Beberido. He started digging there, you see, because of the magnetometer's reading, so that's how they know where to dig. So it's amazing. It appears right there. It looks like magic for archaeologists to do the exact hole right in the middle of the head. There it is. That is the number 7. Number 6 was dug by Roman Piñachan, and the rest of them, from 1 to 5, were found by Matthew Stirling when he went with this project by the Smithsonian to San Lorenzo. Number 5, number 4, that was at the Dion. They love it in San Francisco so much. Number 4 is beautiful. Number 3, I don't have pictures of this in the field. Number 2, I do. Here's the digging for number 2. And finally, Marion Stirling with some other workers there with Stirling digging Olmec head number 1, which replica is here in the campus of San Francisco City College. Thank you very much.